Good morning. So, at the conclusion of Ayin Beis, we've concluded with the Rebbe Rashab wrote, but we're learning the source material for it, the Torah Ohr, the Maimer Mika Hashem Elokeinu. We're at the conclusion of the last section of the Biur on the Maimer, explaining the verse Hamagbi L'Sheves, and then Hamashpili Lires B'Shamayim V'Aretz. Two parts of the verse. And right now we learned about Hamagbi in the context of the whole discussion of Ner Mitzvah and Torah Ohr and the Shamas that activate it all. So Ner Mitzvah, briefly, is Mamata L'Mayla. It's taking the physical matter, the shemen of this world, physical world, and of the animal soul, and the mitzvah elevates it like a makif, elevates it to a whole other level. This is in addition to what the neshama can do on its own. Basically, it's a support to the neshama. It helps the neshama elevate the world around it. That's what a mitzvah does. And of course, a mitzvah can't be performed without a human being. So it's the person that does the mitzvah. But that's the mitzvah, ner mitzvah. It's a ner. And that creates an oir. And ultimately, the Torah Ohr, that is Amshacha Mamayl Lamata. You're getting Amshacha from above, the divine in its pure form. As it is above, that's how it comes down below. Okay. In the language that he's used in this mimer, the psila is like the kav, the wick is like the kav chut, which is like a thread that allows the divine to manifest in the structure of existence. That's a midah v'shir, that has limit. That's confined, limited. And that, the goal is through the Yud Below, that we reach the highest levels, and we can be mamshich and draw down from Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum, Malchus of Ein Sof, and in general, Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum, which does not have any measure. That's Torah. So Ner Mitzvah is connected more to the Kav, and Torah Ohr in that context would be connected to Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum. He doesn't necessarily say it explicitly, but it's apparent that that's the meaning. In Neshama, he definitely said that the Neshama is a psila. On its own, it only has limited amount of love, but then it reaches down below, B'chol Meidecha, the Ava B'chol Meidecha, which is a blig vul love, like from Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum. Okay, so how does it translate into Magbi L'Sheves? So this is a little technical, but you give it a little patience and thought. We work it through. So the word question, the magbi is not just magbia, which means elevated, but the yud at the end, the Alter Rebbe, the yud achara hey huyate. What does it come to add? So he explains kabbalistically, essentially, or in Chassidus, that this is referring to the aliyah. Magbi L'Shev is referring to the aliyah of Malchus. As I explained yesterday, Malchus is what manifests the divine that is concealed. That's why Lesla Megamal Klum, it doesn't have any light of its own, because it is commensurate to creation of the worlds below it. So Malchus on its own is a Dalet. When you do a mitzvah, you add the Yud into the Dalet, and that makes a Hey. Because a Dalet is two legs, the roof and the right leg, and you add a Yud, that makes it into a Hey. Like he said, the Yud makes it into a Hey, and that Yud in turn elevates existence, like he says. And then furthermore, once it adds that, it elevates Malchus, and of course everything in existence, like we learned about mitzvahs. L'mayla be'ed Ein Sof, Malchus the Ein Sof. B'zeu pirish hamagbi shaliyas ahei Malchus datzilus b'Malchus the Ein Sof hu ha'yidei Yud shebetecha hei shu animshach ha'yidei kiyam mitzvah uboy v'yodei hu aliyah hazeis. That's how he teaches the Yud after the word hamagbihi, which is of course consistent with what he said in the original mimer. If you want to come for comparative purposes, if you look there, The only main difference that he added here is Malchus of Ein Sof and Malchus Atzilus. There he didn't speak about Malchus of Ein Sof. There he just spoke about the Yud and the Hey, Nesem Magmor Klum, which is Malchus, and from Tzedek Nas is Doka Terem Gei, Magbia Yud, all the way Ein Sof. Yeah. So here he added Malchus of Ein Sof because that's an addition of this biur on Torah Ohr. And that's where we stop before the bracket. Now comes relatively long bracket. This is a pure assumption, I'm not positive, but there was another bracket, if you recall, on page 39, B, which I suggested was from the Tzemach Tzedek. Again, I haven't seen that explicit. It just seems that way, but I may be wrong about it. It could be written by the Maniach, the Alter Rebbe explained it afterwards. It's not clear exactly who wrote the brackets, but often these brackets could be from someone. It's not likely it's the Mittler Rebbe. If anyone, it's the Tzemach Tzedek or the Alter Rebbe himself. But it's not sure why it's a bracket, because the bracket is definitely an explanation, not of the Maimer. It's an explanation in the Maimer. That's why I'm suggesting it's from the Tzemach Tzedek, explaining the ideas. So here's another bracket that will go over all the way to the next column, around 10 lines into that column, 11 lines. So it's a long bracket, all explaining this Hamagbi. And he hasn't gotten to Lesheves, because if you remember, a Magbi is the elevation of existence. But then the purpose is in a mitzvah is to draw it down into Lesheves in the form of yeshiva. It should be integrated and settled in a pnimius into existence. But he's not going to get back to Lesheves until after the bracket on page 40b. So right now is going to be a longer explanation on this Hamagbi, which will help us understand the Maimer as well. But before I continue, if anybody wants to ask anything about what we've learned so far, then we'll continue inside.
The mitzvah raises the neshama from Malchus of Atzilus to Malchus of Ohr Ein Sof, or it and that's personal, or it raises it that in a general matter, it contributes to the process of elevating Malchus of Atzilus to Malchus of Ohr Ein Sof. Is it macroscopic or is it microscopic or is it both?
Why not both?
Okay, I'll buy that. That's why I added it. Okay, thank you.
Well, in Ayin Beis, he made it clear it's the aliyah of the Adam and the Olam. If you looked, were you at the class when I read yesterday from Ayin Beis?
I wasn't there, but yeah.
In Ayin Beis, on page 1352, he said explicitly, he breaks it down that the mitzvah both elevates the world because it's made of gashmis. Let's say, like he said before, the klaf, the parchment for tefillin, or the money for tzedakah, and the same thing with other mitzvahs. So there clearly a mitzvah is elevating gashmis of the world, like we spoke earlier. It's a psila that's inserted in gashmis and elevates it to rotzna elyon. And then he spoke the second thing, it elevates the nefesh habamis, like he spoke in Torah Ohr. So the Torah Ohr doesn't say 1 and 2, but it's very clear from the Torah Ohr it's both. And Ayin Beis, he makes it very explicit that it's both aliyah of the Olam and of the Adam. Malchus is always the conduit because Malchus is that interface between Atzilus and Biyah. And we discussed yesterday also, you mentioned Ma'aseh Tachtenim, as we know, affects Malchus. Malchus is like the potter's wheel, if you recall, which opens up the channels to higher levels. But Ma'aseh Tachtenim opens everything up all the way to the highest levels, all the way to Malchus of Ein Sof. Exactly right. And remember, the Kav Chut, which is the Psila, originates from Malchus of Ein Sof, which we learned earlier in this Maimer. So there's the process of creation, which is the diminishing of the earth so it can create existence. Then there's the process of elevation, which is Avodah, where we elevate existence from its concealed state to the Hey, from the Dalet to the Hey, and the Yud elevating it all the way up to Malchus of Ein Sof, which ultimately leads it to Torah Ohr as well. But we'll talk about Torah Ohr afterwards. Right now we're talking in the mitzvah.
Perfect.
The mitzvah does. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So the bracket begins on the line, Kiyum mitzvah. We're talking 3, 6, 8 lines from the top of 40b. 40a, sorry. 40a, first column. So it starts at brackets, as I said, will go pretty much to the same place to the next column. Okay. Ubiyazeh, an explanation of this idea, as I said, this is clearly an explanation. So just to repeat again, it's possible the explanation came from the Alter Rebbe afterwards, but it's not so likely, because why is it not part of, this is already a beer, so it's a beer on a beer. So that's why I'm suggesting Tzemach Tzedek explaining it as he did earlier in a powerful way of explaining the two Hakdamas that this beer began with. The Hakdama that's Shemin and everything, and that Torah is Eid Ein Sof. So in that bracket on page 39b, so there's basically two long brackets in this mimer that explains. So he says, "Beer zeh alpima shekoshev b'zeir pasha v'yechi." According to what it will explain this, according to what it says in Zohar Pasha V'Yechi, it gives us the page, which is generally that Tzemach Tzedek is the one that adds Mar Mekemis. The Alter Rebbe's Maimorim usually do not have sources. There are times, but usually not. So he gives us the page, 232 at the end of B, 232 at the bottom of page B there. Bepirish Yehi Shem. So the Zohar asks, Maishna, the Ka'ama Yehi. What is it coming to add? Yehi Shem, the Yehi. That his name shall be.
As in Yehi Shem Hashem Mevarach?
Yehi Shem Hashem Mevarach Ma'atav Adelam. Yeah, I think there's also Yehi Shem, Yehi Shmei Rabba. No, that's Yehi Shmei Rabba. Yeah, that's probably Yehi Shem, yeah. So he says, Maishna, the Ka'ama Yehi. What is this Yehi coming to, the word Yehi coming to add? This is a Zohar, so it's a mystical explanation. Ella, Yehi is Roza, Dam Shechuse Mahu Asad Ilah. Yehi is telling us the secret. When you say Yehi Shem, it's not just a Hebrew word that says, may his name be. Yehi means that you're drawing from that location. Asad in Hebrew is a place, Mokim. From that place, the Ihu Sosim, that is concealed. That concealed place. So Yehi Shem is saying we're drawing something from a very concealed place, from a concealed place. The Ka'amran, the Ihu Yudke, Adroza de Bris, the Ihu Yutata, Kegavna de Yudilon, Sherusa Besefa, Ubegin Kach. I just want to read the whole thing and then I'll translate. Sherusa de Ksufa, Ubegin Kach, Yehi Roza, Dam Shakusa bin Tamira, the Choltmir Adarga Tata. Okay, let me just give you the English summation, then we'll read it inside. He's saying the Yehi is coming to say that we're drawing from a concealed, a deeper superconscious level, if you wish. Sasim. No, we know from Chochma Stima, Moichis Stima, Sasim is a concealed. He doesn't necessarily Chochma Stima. I'm just using that as an association, a concealed state. So it's coming from the Ka'amran. If we say the Iu Yudke, Adroza de Bris, the Iu Yutata. Okay. So let's first, before I read, let me explain what Yud is. The Yud is a level that refers to the first Yud, is usually the Rosh Tevis of Hashem. Yud Kei Vav Kei starts with a Yud. That's why you'll see often in a Siddur, Yud. Yud is always considered to be the beginning of the divine name. But in the Yud itself, there's the Yud Ilah, there's a higher Yud, and the Yud Tata. Just to give an example, there's a famous story with the Alter Rebbe, that when he once went over to a chassid, and he said, you have a mitzvah to support your family. I have a mitzvah v'shenantim levanecha to teach my children. So let's exchange a mitzvah for a mitzvah. So the Alter Rebbe told him, I'll pay you so you'll have money to support your family, and you'll teach my son. He was talking about the Mittler Rebbe. When the Rebbe told the story, he shared like this. He said, the chassid was a wise man. So he said to the Alter Rebbe, what should I teach him? So the Alter Rebbe closed his eyes and became very fadveket, very, how do you say fadveket in English? That's hard for me to translate that. like a state of dveikus, deep meditation. And then the Alter Rebbe said, and the Rebbe says this with a niggin. You may have heard me. I spoke about this a few times with a niggin, a famous song. The Rebbe says it. You could see he's like, you hear a cry in his voice. He says, you begin from the beginning, Aleph Beis. Then the Alter Rebbe started the niggin. He said, "Vos is an Aleph? What is an Aleph? A Pintele von eben, na Pintele von unten, und a Kav HaMechaber was bin sie zusammen." What is an Aleph? A Yud above, a Yud below, and a line, like a diagonal line that connects them. And he continued, "Vos is an Aleph? A Yud von eben is der Eberster, a Id, Yud, a Id von unten, und der Kaf in Yehi Shem was bin sie zusammen, was mit dem Mechaber. Das is an Aleph." That's how he said it. So an Aleph consists of a Yud above, look at an Aleph, and a Yud below, and a line that connects them. The line is the line of Yehi Shem. The Yud above is Hashem. The Yud below is the Yid, like we say, Pintele Yud, the spark of a neshama below. This connects to what we learned in Ayin Beis, the Nitzutz, if you remember. The Nitzutz Yachid, that connects to Yechida, the Nitzutz Yechida. The Nitzutz Yachid we learned was a spark of the divine. That goes into the Nitzutz Nivra, that becomes a spark that enters into creation. So these are the two, Yud Lamaila, Yud Lamata, is in Zohar. He's not giving the whole elaboration, but he's basically saying that the Yud Lamaila, the Yud K, Ad Raza de Bris, which is Raza de Bris usually refers to Yesod, the Bris. The Yud Tata, that's the Yud below, Kegavne the Yud Ilah. Sherusa Kesefa or Kesufa, that the Yud Lamata corresponds to the Yud above. The Sherusa Kesefa, I'm not sure what he means by that it serves it, or I'm not sure what it means, but then he says, begin kach, and because of that, Yehi Raza.
Maybe Sherusa is the beginning. Maybe.
Kesufa is the beginning?
Sherusa may be the beginning.
The beginning is like the end. Okay, maybe. You see Sherusa at the beginning? I didn't know Sherusa. I thought it was more from the word Sherus. Maybe. I have to look it up. I'll look up the Zohar. Or begin kach. And because of that, Yehi Raza dam shechusa mitamira dechol tmirin. Adagetata. Because there's the connection of the higher Yud to the lower Yud, and they're interconnected. So therefore, that secret, the Raza, the secret of the Hamshacha, what he called before from Tamira, from a concealed place of, and here it says Tamira dechol tmirin, the hidden from all the hidden. That will not be nimshach all the way to the lowest level. Ubamila da, and in this word Yehi. So what do you have? Yehi is basically Yud K and a Yud. That's what he's saying. It's the Yud K is the Yud above, and the Yud below is the final Yud Yehi, the Yud after the Yud K. And in that word is Skayim Kol Uvda de Bereshis. And in this word Yehi, the whole world is preserved, is sustained with this word Yehi. Kamoy Damrinan, like we say, Yehi Rekiya. Not sure why he brings Rekiya, not Oyer. Yehi Oyer also. Yehi Oyer, Yehi Rekiya. But I think the reason he brings Rekiya, because Rekiya is a connection between above and below. Rekiya was separated between the higher waters and the lower waters. So Yehi is coming to tell us the Yud K is connected to the Yud below. So this is what he's saying. He's bringing the Zohar to explain Hamagbihi. So you see the depth. The Alter Rebbe just said Hamagbihi, the Yud at the end of Magbihi, it comes to elevate from Malchus all the way to Malchus of Ein Sof. By bringing the Zohar, you suddenly see that the Alter Rebbe didn't just make a little remez in a letter. There's a whole Zohar that talks about Yehi is also a Yud at the end. Yud Hey, Yud K, and then a Yud, which is what is referring to what? An elevation from something below all the way up to the secrets of all secrets, to the hidden of all hidden. Which essentially is the Malchus of Atzilus. 1 second, let me finish. Malchus of Atzilus is like is comparing to the Yud below, connecting all the way to Malchus of Ein Sof, which is comparing to Tamir Dechol. He didn't say it's exactly level. He's explaining what we just learned, Hamagbihi. that last Yud is essentially the same concept. And it's also with a Hey, because the Yud is inserted in the Dalet, turns it into a Hey, and then that Yud elevates the Hey and elevates Malchus all the way to Malchus of Ein Sof. So you see here in the Zohar, Yehi is the same concept. Yud Lamata, Yud Lamailo, and they're connected to one another. And he says, furthermore, that all of existence stands on this. And the proof is Yehi Rakia. When the Eibishter creates the world, he didn't just say, I'm creating a heaven, a firmament. He said Yehi Rakia, which means I'm imbuing in the Rakia, the Yehi of the higher Yud is coming into the lower Yud. That's the Zohar. At Kan L'Shene of the Zohar. That's quoting the Zohar. Now he's going to explain, and then now he's going to continue to discuss this. Any questions on this piece?
No, he's saying here in the Zohar, in Perus Mosek Midvash, Sheiruso kesoifo hahaschole hu kehasoiv.
Okay, so then it's so good.
Yeah.
Good. That's good. That's exactly right. That works. Good. We move on. Or any other questions on the Zohar?
What is the bris?
Bris is usually Yesod. Yesod is right, but the lowest Hamshacha. Yesod is right before Malchus. So that's what Pashas, what he's saying, that the Yudke, Ad Rosa the Bris, the Yutata. The Yutata is the Bris, which is Kegavna of the Yudi law.
Here he is saying, Ad Soida Bris, Shehua Malchus.
Where does he say that?
This is a Perush Mosek Midvash on the Zohar.
Okay, fine. Okay. So then it's Malchus. Usually, but this is usually Yesod, but it could be Yesod and Malchus. You say Malchus. But bottom line is the Yutata, which definitely works because we said Malchus before. Yeah, Malchus. But the story with Alter Rebbe just gives you a little more body, a little more substance here. Okay. And it's the Kav of Yehi Shem, means our avodah connects the Yud Below to the Yud Above.
Did the Alter Rebbe make that up, like in that moment, or that someone heard that's known from? I mean, that's just the most beautiful explanation of an Aleph I think I've ever heard.
I don't like to say the words he made it up. The Alter Rebbe was quite an innovator. Yes, I wouldn't say made it up. It's obviously maybe even built on the Zohar for all we know.
Yeah.
So, but
wow.
Yeah, but that expression with the Aleph, what is an Aleph, is the Alter Rebbe. It doesn't say earlier. In Kabbalah, you'll probably find that the Aleph, the Yud Above and the Yud Below, I'm sure Kabbalah talks about it. I never researched it, to be honest. But in Sefer Erchim from Chabad, the Chassidus Encyclopedia, there's an Erech Aleph. Maybe there he talks about more.
I'll take it upon myself to look into that for you, Binah.
Yeah, it's all right. Good.
Yeah. They only have when they got through Aleph. I forget. They only got like through a few letters in that.
There's not.
So.
No. It goes from Oisius. It's Erech Oisius, not Aleph. In Erech Oisius, the Sefer Echim goes from Aleph through Aleph Ches.
Yeah, so I'm saying it only starts with Aleph. It doesn't even get to base in terms of words.
Yeah, but this is not Aleph. It's the Erech Oisius, Aleph Vav Oisius.
I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
He also saying in Zohar, the Alter Rebbe is not bringing it. Kemo de'at Omar Yehi Rokia, Yehi Me'oirois, Yehi Oil.
Oh, he does say Yehi Oil? Okay. So maybe I suggested why he brought the Kia, because the Kia also has the Havdalah ben Elyonim and Taktenim. So maybe that's why he brings the Kia. And the Zohar says on all of them is Yehi, meaning the word Yehi is used in creation because that's a key. If you talk about interface, this is a perfect interface. The interface of the Yud Lamaila and the Yud Lamata. Okay, let's read on. V'chein it continues. The more I read this, the more it's clear to me is the Tzemach Tzedek, because I'm quite familiar with the Tzemach Tzedek. I worked a lot with the Tzemach Tzedek's Mamorim. This is very Tzemach Tzedek style, bringing Zohars and quoting and comparing to Tzemach Tzedek's approach to things. So that I'm ready to say that this is the Tzemach Tzedek's bracket. Okay. V'chein hu b'zeir breishis And same is written in Zohar Bereshis. He's bringing another Zohar, Daf Yud Daled Amud Beis, Daf Yud Vav Amud Beis. Sorry, Yud Vav is essentially 16. Usually we write it as Tazayin, but sometimes they write it out Yud Vav because like the name of Hashem. But the Yud Vav is 16. So Tazayin Amud Beis. So what he says here is similar in Zohar. V'hapirushu, and now he's going to explain what this means. This is now in the language of Chassidus. Ki Chochma ki Yud Kei hem Chochma Binah. So Yud Kei, Yud and Hey of Yehi is Chochma and Binah. Shah Chochma Nikri Yud. Chochma is called Yud. Why? Shehu B'chinas Nekuda. Because Chochma, we know, is a spark. It's a point. V'hainu lefi ki Reishis Chochma, because Reishis Chochma, Yiddish Hashem, Reishis Chochma, the beginning, meaning the whole process begins with Chochma. V'hainu Reishis Hagilu me'en sei baruch hu. So higher than Chochma is Keser. And we say Chochma ma'ayin to matzah because it's ayin. The first spark, the first flash, the first glimmer of something is Chochma. That's why we have the flash of an idea. Consciousness is born in Chochma, so it's like a Yud. Reishis Hagilu me'en sei baruch hu. The Reishis Hagilu, he continues, he says, and the beginning of a Gilui, ef shaliyas rak b'chinas nekuda. The beginning of a Gilui cannot be only a nekuda. It can't come rushing in a whole expansive flow. Everything starts with a nekuda. That's how it works. I mean, you have a very intense level, and it's expressing itself. It starts with one flash, with one concentrated point. Rak b'chinas nekuda. Kedei sheyuchlo lisbel ulahakil. In order that the makablim, that are receiving it, should be able to contain it, lisbel, to contain, ulahakil, it's two of the similar words. Lisbel means that they should be able to contain it, integrate it, it shouldn't blow their circuits, basically. So it's two words similar, lisbel, ulahakil. Kumoi hamayon, like we see when it comes to water. So when you have a wellspring, a live well, a live spring of water in a mayon, who cotton. When you go to the root, if you go to the root of where wells are buried deep into the ground, you're not going to see a big river or an ocean. It's coming out very small. Tipa tipa, it says sometimes. Drop by drop. But it's very intense because it's coming straight from the source. Initially, like Reishis Chochma, like Reishis Hagili, in the beginning, it comes out who cotton. It's very small, it's very minuscule. Like Achakach Bisrach Kema Moker. As a distance, afterwards, as it distance itself and starts traveling away from the source, Misrach V'nasa Nahar. It expands and will become a river. So when you see a river, and then you trace the river back to its source, and it's usually going to be a source in somewhere a mayon. That's what it says, mayon nor, usually goes hand in hand. Now, of course, a river could also be filled up by rainwater and it could be larger rivers that come out of oceans. Not taking away from that, but everywhere you're going to find the source, and the source is going to be very like he says, cotton, like a yud, and then it will expand as it travels away from the source. It expands into a river. Recheves Hanar. Talk about the Mittler Rebbe's birthday and Yortzeit and his Chag Hagulas these days. Isn't it today? I think so, right?
Yes, it is.
So the Mittler Rebbe, we usually associate the Alter Rebbe to Chochma and the Mittler Rebbe to Binah. And Binah is Recheves Hanar. It's expansive. Alter Rebbe is far more concentrated than Chochma. That's why you'll find by the Mittler Rebbe Sfarim, you find many Sfarim that with the name Binah, Imre Binah. You have a lot of Sfarim with the Shad, because Nun Share Binah. Shad is a gate, again, wide, expansive. So you have Share Tshuva, you have Share Tefillah, and more Share Eira, Share Yichud. These are names of the Mittler Rebbe Sfarim. And you have a lot of Binah and Shar are most of the names of his Sfarim. Okay, so Nasanor, so becomes a river. So what do we have so far? That the Yud is Chochma. The Zehu, and this level of Nor is already the Hey. A Yud is a dot. A Hey is expansive. A Hey has width. It's not just a point. So the Hey is Shena, because there's a Hey Achrena. Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud Hey. So the Yud is Chochma. The Hey is Shena, Shehi Bechinas Recheves Hanor. That's the level of Recheves Hanor, the expansive river. Avla Chochma, Shehi Kreve Yesod Ein Sof. But Chochma, which is closer than the Hey, to Ein Sof, the Hi B'chinas Mayon, Hurak Nekuda. It's closer than Ein Sof. That's the level of the Mayon, the spring of water, the actual source, closer to the source, and that's just a Nekuda, just a point. Okay. So he's slowly explaining this whole idea, as I said, in Chassidus Chabad language. So it'll be a lot easier to understand what this whole Hamagbi is. Not just Remez, but we'll get into a little more Chabad understanding of it. V'hainu gamkein, and another thing that this indicates, v'hainu gamkein b'chinas bitl. So the Yud, number one, is it has to come as a spark, a point, because the first reason he gave was because for us to be able to contain it. But now also another element of this Yud is that it's a state of bitl. Anything that's expansive means it already has identity. It has presence. A Yud is the minimal presence. It's present, there's consciousness, but it's in a state of bitl. That's why Yud is always a siman for bitl, to be like a Yud, which means all concentrated, not be expansive and spread yourself out, but the Yud of bitl. So Yud is always a thing of bitl. So he said, I know Gamkin Bechinas bitl. Vihine. Okay. Doesn't go into detail here, but that's why you find Chochma is Koyachma. In Tanya chapter 35 in the Haggai, he says that he heard from the Magid Alter Rebbe, from his teacher, that in Chochma is Yavhu Levade Vein Zulose. Chochma senses, like we've talked many times, senses an intelligence, a reality greater than itself. So it's in a state of bitl. Chochma ma'ayin timotza. Chochma feels the ayin, that it comes from somewhere. That's why when a person has a moment, a flash, you sense a sense of awe of something greater than yourself because it's coming. Binah is already you preoccupied with understanding the idea. So you're expanding it and developing it. Not that it's necessarily ego in the context of arrogance, but there has to be your involvement. That's what Binah is. That I would understand. A Chochma is the spark. So the spark, which is a state of bit. Okay, but now we have to talk about what happens with this Yud. That's the Yud. The Yud of Yud Kei. V'hinei. And now, because remember, to stay in Chochma is not the Kavanah. The Kavanah is that from the spark should now expand into Binah, the river, and then continue to extend into the other spheres, because you want a full structure here. So even though Chochma is the beginning, like we say, Bereshis, Baralakim, Bereshis is Bechuchmasa. We learned this in Ayin Beis. Bereshis is the beginning. Chochma is the beginning, the first. But then you want it to develop into a full structure all the way to Malchus of Atzilus. So he says, so now, when it has to come down, that's already a revealed world, not a hidden world. Moker Dibiyah, the source of Briya Yitzir Asiyah, like we discussed. Malchus is the channels, the 10 spheres into creation of Biyah, to be a Moker of Biyah. V'hi b'chinas Shem Hey, and that Malchus is the level of Shem Hey, of the Hey. Shem Dafka, Shu Agili Luzulase. So you're calling it Shem, not just the letter Hey, the name. Because a name, what's the purpose of a name? A person does not need a name for themselves. A name indicates a relationship with another, that we have a handle by which I call you. I call you by your name. So he says a shame is already referring Gili Lizulase, a Gili to another, which is of course what Malchus is. So Malchus is often associated with the level of shame. When we say shame, like Yehi Shem, or anytime shame is generally the level of Malchus. Okay, so now when you want to have the Amshach from Chochma, from the Yud, all the way to the Hey, and he means here the last Hey. This Amshach is through Yesod of Zah. So correct. The bris is going to touch not on Malchus, but on Zah. It's the Yesod Zah. So let me explain that. In the spheres, as we know, Chochma, Binah, Das is Moichid, intellect. Then comes Chesed, Gvura, Teferes, Netzach, Chod, Yesod, and Malchus. So we know that Moichid, then comes Midas. Chesed, Gvura, Teferes, Netzach, Chod, Yesod are Zah. So when we usually speak about Zah, Zoyer Ampin, the small face, is referring to the 6 Midas, from Chesed through Yesod. Malchus is the Makabel, because Zah is the Mashpia. But in Zah itself, Yesod Zah is the end of the Hashpah. That's why Yesod is often the example in the human biology, is the male reproductive organ, and Malchus is the female. So Yesod is foundation, is like the bris, that's Mamshir, the Eris, from all the spheres above it, namely Zah, but even Meichin too, but especially Zah, into Malchus. So Yesod is a channel that is mashpia, the seed, essentially into the womb of Malchus. So as such, that's where he talk about the chibur yichud of Yesod and Malchus. So it goes like this. So he says, so now when you want to have shachar from Chochma to Malchus, it has to go through Yesod Zah, the Yesod of Zah, who gam ken bechinas Yud. And that's also a level of Yud. So now we have 2 Yuds. The Yud of Chochma, the initial spark, and the Yud of Yesod at the end of the process, that Yud is going to be that mashpia into Malchus, the Hey. V'zehu inyan Yud Tato Roza de Bris. So he's now touching exactly. That's the Roza de Bris of the Zohar. The first Zohar we read in the beginning of the bracket, we talked to the Zohar from Parsha Vayechi. He said Roza de Bris. He said that's the Yud. He said that clearly. Yud Tato Kegavli the Yud. He said Roza de Bris Yud Tato. What Yud Tato is that? That's the Yud of Yesod, which is also Rosh Hashanah's Yud, for incidentally. I don't know if it's incidental, but Yesod. So that Yesod is Yud Tato, the Roza de Bris. So now comes, he's explaining the Zohar. So now we have like this. So we have a Yud Below, that's the level of Tomei that's hidden, that's Chochma. You have Yud Tato, that's Yesod. And the Yud Tato and Yud Below are connected to each other, and that's Mamshich into Malchus. Yeah. So he says like this now. V'zehu Yehi Shem Hashem Mevelech. He spells it out now. Yehi. Remember the whole thing began with Yehi Shem. The Zohar comes to explain Yehi Shem. So this is the meaning, Yehi Shem Hashem Mevelech. With the emphasis on the word Yehi. Shaliyas Hagili b'bchinas Malchus hanikra Shem. Yehi Shem Hashem Mevelech. That in order for there to be the Gilui in the level of Malchus, which is the level of Shem, of God's name, which is for the Zulas, a Shem is in order to be Mashpiyah to Biyah, to the other. So that Gilui, in order to get that, Hu al Yedei Yehi Chochma Binah Yesod. That's through the Yehi Shem. Yud of Chochma, of Yehi, Hey Binah, and the Yud of Yesod is nimshach into Shem, Yehi Shem. That's what creates the name, which is Malchus. So you see here, the Zohar is a Zohar. But look at the beard here, and the whole thing comes alive in a whole other way now. Because the Zohar doesn't spell out exactly what means Yehi Shem. It just talks about the Yud Above and the Yud Below. Here he's spelling it out. So again, the Zeh Yehi Shem. Yehi is Chochma Binah Yesod, Yud Hey Yud, the higher Yud of Chochma, the Hey of Binah, and the Yud of Yesod, Yehi Shem, to be the Gili in Malchus, Shem Malchus.
That's amazing.
That's the explanation, yeah. So here you have a perfect example how Chabad Chassidus explains a Zohar.
One of the best examples I've seen in Bekitzer.
Yeah. I recently had somebody said to me, what does Chassidus add to Kabbalah, to Zohar? So I didn't point out this one, but I will now. I pointed something else. I mean, there's many. The Alter Rebbe there's a whole Biuri Zohar on Zohar from the Alter Rebbe. And Mittler Rebbe, Samach Tzedek. Yeah, this is very good. This is beautiful. So now the Zohar comes alive. It's not just a diuk of letters. Yud here, Yud there, Abraz the bris. And he says also it's the Yesod of, he called it the kiyum of all existence. Why? How is that? What does that mean? Now we understand it. Because in order to create Malchus, to create Biyah, it needs to have Yehi that goes into the Shem.
Yeah.
So next time you say Yehi Shem, you have a whole new kavanah.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So this is like a simon almost for almost like the structure of the entire Seder Shtashlis. I know it's talking about, I think, about Atzilus here primarily.
But he takes it to Malchus of Ein Sof, no?
So, so it is the whole Seder. Beautiful. Wow.
Yeah.
Would you call Hasidus a beer of Kabbalah? I mean,
the Rebbe Marash once said. The Rebbe Marash said that the world thinks that Chassidus is a beer of Kabbalah, and I say, he said, that Kabbalah is a beer of Chassidus. The Rebbe explains it in Kuntas Inyana Shel Teres Chassidus, because what does that mean? Chassidus came after Kabbalah. The answer is because Kabbalah speaks in the worlds of Sod, in the mystical, esoteric language, and Chassidus covers Pshat Remez Drus Sod, Nefesh Ruach, Neshama Chaya, and Chassidus is Yechida. So the Rebbe explains that Yechida adds a dimension that is beyond even Kabbalah. So in a way, Kabbalah is the Sod within Chassidus, the Kabbalistic aspect of it. So in a sense, Chassidus is I would say, that Kabbalah therefore is an explanation of Chassidus in the world of the esoteric, of the Sod. But practically speaking, it also goes the other way around. First came Kabbalah, Zohar, Arizal, and then came Chassidus to explain it. But it goes back, they feed each other. Once you understand Chassidus, and especially application, applied Chassidus to your personal avodah, then you'll see Kabbalah is both the source of it, but also Kabbalah gets enriched. So you ultimately see that Kabbalah is coming to explain the full picture as it is in Chassidus, even though Kabbalah came first. But it's like many things. Like we learn in Gemara, a Gemara will bring alive a pasuk in Chumash. So obviously the Gemara's explanation of the pasuk, not the other way around. But in some ways, the Gemara, once you know the Gemara, you see the pasuk in a different light. So the pasuk becomes, the verse becomes like the basis of the explanation as it is in Gemara. Same idea.
Can you take a question?
Yeah.
So here, just to bring this mashal or this structure of the two yudim of the Aleph into practical terms, so Chassidus applied really balabatish practical terms. Is it fair to say that to the extent any yid can be megala elokus, we can be revealing godliness in this lowest world, that it has to somewhat follow a similar process? Of course, we're talking about it here in this mashal, in this mimer of a gilui from the Ma'ila Lamata. But to the extent we are megala elokus in this world, we have to start. Any gilui has to start with a bittul of the yud, and there's a chochma of that revelation. And then once we are doing it in the proper way with the bittul, l'shem shamayim, it's like I'm not making a gilui of some great idea for my own sake, but for the sake of shamayim, for the sake of the Eibishter. If I do it in the bittul, then I can expand it into the hay. But essentially, any proper godly revelation by the human in this world has to start with bittul. Can one go that far, or it's just too much of a forbidden stretch?
No, you can go that far. You can go that far. That's perfectly fitting and applicable. Yeah.
Perfect.
I'll take it a step further. Every interaction you have with other people, every time you teach, every time we deal with our children, if you do it properly, it always begins with a yud, then expands into a hey, then a vav is the hamshacha, which he's not getting into so much here, and the final hey. Everything is that way. You don't begin by giving someone the whole package. You begin by, slowly, an aleph, like we said, aleph based, and then you expand it, then you extend it, and then the recipient in the final hey receives it. So yes, Wonderful. This is absolutely applicable. I know that you spoke about bittul, but it begins with bittul because it all starts with that, not only a yud as a concentrated point, but also a state of bittul, like we say every day. V'nafshi ka'ofer lakoil tiyeh, psach libi b'seidah secha. So when your nefesh is like a yud, like ka'ofer, humble, then God, your heart opens up to Torah. Bittul always opens up channels. Correct.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, good. So now he says like this, Valpi, Tzemach Tzedek in his classic, he's going to now bring in even more Kabbalah from Kisvei Arizal. So this is the Zohar, an explanation of the Zohar. Valpi Kisvei Arizal, and according to the writings of Arizal, interesting, it always called Kisvei Arizal, even though the Ari did not write it. It was Rab Chaim Vital that wrote it, but they called Kisvei Arizal. So you could say the writings of the teachings of Arizal, basically. So Kisvei Arizal, who?
It's always called Kisvei Arizal. I don't know why, but that's how it's called.
I just said that, even though he didn't write it. So I explained Kisvei Teres Arizal. Okay. Kisvei Arizal, who? Ki Yesod Abba. So now he's making it's a little more intricate now. Yesod Abba mistayim be Yesod Zah. Okay. So until now we've been talking Chochma Binah, mashpia into the midas, into Zah, into Yesod Zah, which in turn transmits into Malchus. So there you actually have Yud Ke Vav Ke there, but it's not relevant because it's talking about Yehi Shem. There's no Vav there. Okay. But now in the Arizal goes a little more detailed. The anatomy, he dissects the anatomy of Chochma more. In Chochma itself, there's also Yesod. So Yesod Abba is Yesod Chochma. So he says like this. Yesod Abba mistayim be Yesod Zah. So remember, all the spheres have all the other spheres within them. So in Chochma, you have Chochma through Malchus, you have Binah through Malchus, Binah, you have Chochma through Malchus. So in Chochma, in Abba, which is the father, you also have Yesod Abba. So the Yud of Chochma, if you really break it down, is really the Yud of Yesod within Chochma, which makes the connection to Yesod Zah even deeper. So he says, Yesod Chochma is mistayim. Where is the Hamshach of Yesod Chochma of Abba? Where does it conclude? Where does it end up? In Yesod Zah. Nimtza. So what do we know from this? That B'chinas Yudi Lo Shu Abba Mamish Meir be Yesod Zah. That the Yudi Lo, the higher Yud, which is Mamish Abba, radiates in Yesod Zah. U'lechein nikri Yesod Zah gam ken Yud. He's coming to add why they both called Yud when they're seemingly two different levels completely. This is a higher Yud, this is a lower Yud. Because the Yud, the original Mamish Yud is Chochma. But in Chochma, there's the Yesod Chochma. So the Yesod Chochma manifests in Yesod Zah, so it's also a Yud. It's a lower Yud, but it's also a Yud. So you have that in concentration of the Yud of Chochma on a lower level, and the bittul of the Yud of Chochma all manifests into the Yud of Yesod. Now that there's a Yesod Chochma, that helps understand how. And then he continues, V'zeu gamkein, Inyan hayud shenisesev bepinchas ben Elazar hakoyin. We know the word Pinchas, the name Pinchas, is sometimes written Pei Nun Ches Samach, and sometimes Pei Yud Nun Ches Samach. So we're told, Rashi brings it in B'chukei in different places is brought, that Pinchas was a Yud was added to his name. Pinchas, the son of Elazar HaKohen. Avur Shekina al Pgam HaBris, because he avenged the desecration of the bris of Zimri. The story in Pasha, end of Pasha Balak, what happened? Zimri took the Midianite woman and he desecrated it publicly. In what way? In a sexual way. So it was a Pgam HaBris, it's called a Pgam. He desecrated. an injury, a wound to the bris. Basically, he wounded Yesod, the level of Yesod. Since Pinchas was misaken that by avenging that Chil Hashem, by sparing them, so therefore the Zohar says, so that's why Hashem said add a Yud into his name. Why a Yud? So now we understand why. Because the Yud is Yesod. So he says, Zohar is Daf Reish Yud Gimel Amud Beis, V'Daf Reish Tazvav Amud Beis, V'Daf Reish Lamed Vav Beis. 3 different Zohars. That's the reason. Because he made a tikkun of Yesod. Yesod is Yud. That's the Yud of Pinchas. So you have an additional piece here in the whole discussion. The Tzemach Tzedek I'm saying, but it's most likely. He now says, I'm just going to finish the paragraph. It says, Raya, parentheses, the loy kepirish amigdash melech pashi vayechi bepirish yehi ayin sham. He's saying from here is a proof that we're not going. It's not according to the pirish of migdash melech. It could be the dvash lefi that you quoted, Rav Shlomo, maybe the migdash melech, that it's Malchus. I don't know. I have to look it up. But he says to look there ayin sham. So his pirish in yehi is different than the pirish here, and he's writing from what we just learned. It's adaya loike pirish hamigdash melech. It's not the migdash melech is a classic interpretation of Zohar based on Kisva Rizal, but he said it's not like that pirish there.
What's the shaykhus of this tikkun with Pinchas relative to what we just learned?
Let me just finish here. 1 second.
Oh, sorry.
Yesod is the tikkun of Yesod, the Yud of Yesod. Pinchas was Mesaken Pgam Habris, which is Yesod. Okay. Va'ayin Sham B'Haramaz, he's telling us to look at another commentary on the Zohar, Moshe Zakuto, which was Ramaz, Shu Yud Shamilui Hei Achrena the Shem Ab. That the Yud is referring to the Milui of the Hei Achrena of Shem Ab. So you know Shem Ab is one of the configurations of Yud Ke Vav Ke, where the Hei B'Milui Yudin, which means you write out Yud, Hey Yud. So he's saying it's the Yud in the Hey Yud, which also fits to what we spoke on Magbihi. Remember, it's Hey Yud, Yehi, Hey Yud. The Shem Ab, Shu B'chinas Yesod Abba. That's the level of Yesod Abba, so that fits to what we're speaking here, that the Yud, according to Arizal, is Yesod Abba, which manifests in Yesod Zah, which is Mamshech into Yehi Shem, into Malchus. Va'ayin be'idra Rabba, Daf Kuf Mem Beis. And he tells us to look in Idra Rabba, which is Zeir Nosei, the page Daf Kuf Mem Beis 142. Okay. That concludes this paragraph. Any questions? Did you understand the connection to Pinchas? Because Pinchas is Mesaken Yesod, so that's why he was given a Yud.
Yes. Understood.
Yeah.
But why is it brought up here? Why is the Indian of Pinchas? How does it fit in?
I don't know.
That was more my question. Yeah.
This is not uncommon. It's either probably if you start looking into the topic, you may find there's a deeper connection. Not sure.
The Inyan Abris is a very basic thing that that is poigem, and the Inyan Abris, this is the Yesod of Zoh, like you said before, that this is the Mashpia, that is Mashpia in Malchus. So the poigem in the Bris is a very powerful thing. And here it said that's why the Eibshter gave him the Yud, because this Yud.
That's not what they're asking. They're asking is why is it relevant to this mimer that we need to know this?
No, because he wants to show the power of Yud.
Okay, but why? I mean, okay, fine. Yeah, that's the Pasha's thing. He's bringing more the power of the Yud.
I think this is very powerful.
Malchus not serious.
With a Yud, without a Yud, everything is very exact.
Yeah, but the bigger question is how this helps us understand the whole mimer of Ner Mitzvah Torah and Ner Hashem Nishma Soda. Remember, the whole Hamagbi is coming to explain the mitzvah elevates the physical existence. Malchus adds the Yud into the Dalet, so it makes it a Hey. And that Hey is then the Yud elevates all the way up to Malchus of Ein Sof. So the real question is how all this we just learned in the bracket helps us understand that process. So that I would wait till we finish the brackets, the whole bracket rather, and see the full explanation. I think we'll understand it with the next paragraph because he's going to explain further and he's going to connect it to the Maimer. Knowing that Samach Tzedek and how he works, usually that's what he does. Right now, he just explained the Magbi, but it's going to definitely bring us back to the theme of the Maimer itself, which is what a mitzvah accomplishes in existence. A Magbi, Aliyah Hey, 1 second, Aliyah Hey. So Yehi Shem is essentially the process of the Aliyah.
The Aliyah from Malchus the Ein Sof until Shem, Malchus that goes in Bia.
One second. So there's Mamayl Lamata, Yehi Shem is Mamayl Lamata. The Yud, the Hey, the Yud into Shem. Then there's Mamata Lamayla, what a mitzvah does, where it elevates Malchus all the way back to Yehi and all the way back to Malchus of Ein Sof. But let's see how he explains it, then I'll try to contextualize it.
But the main Nekuda is not Malchus the Ein Sof, that it is bringing the even the Shalish Klippus at Meyers, bringing it up because it's coming from such a high shoyresh. That's what the mitzvah is.
Yeah, I was going to say it's an Indian of Chibur. He's trying to show us as an emotion.
Well, right now, let's not speculate here. The first thing he wanted to explain is the Magbi. He explained the whole issue of the Magbi, the Yud, and the Hey, and how the Yud elevates, and explained it with Yehi Shem. The connection to the Maimer, I would wait to see till the end of the bracket, then we'll go back to that. I'm not going to jump on that right now. Yeah, we know that. The elevation of Malchus of Atzilus, which is the Hey, is being elevated all the way upward to Malchus of Ein Sof, but he did not bring it back yet to that topic. We'll get there. We shall get there. Good. So I'm going to stop here at the end of the paragraph on 40a.